Should you buy an ultra-wide monitor for your desk setup, or should you go with a regular 16:9 monitor like the one I have here? In this video we're talking all about this topic, and this is my work setup in Gothenburg. Here I am using a 16:9 4K monitor from Innocen. In my home office setup in Stockholm, I am using a Huawei MateView GT soundbar, which is a 21:9 34-inch monitor. And in my office setup in Stockholm, I am also using an ultra-wide monitor, but this is a Lenovo ThinkVision version. So I have spent a considerable amount of time using these different versions of monitors, and I will go through all the pros and cons of the different ones and decide which one I personally would choose if I get to pick a monitor today. So this is a 34-inch 21:9 monitor, and I've been using it for a little bit more than a year here with this setup. The main pros I personally have when working with this is partly that I'm using softwares that really benefit from having a lot of space horizontally. So this, for example, is Screaming Frog that I'm using to crawl websites. And when I get this monitor, I can get so much data up from one crawl here in Screaming Frog that I don't have to scroll sideways at all to the same extent. There is still stuff that I need to scroll sideways to be able to find, but the amount of overview that I get in one of these crawls is just ridiculously good compared to a regular 16:9 aspect ratio monitor. The next type of use case that I really value here is that you can have one main window and put this in the middle, so you have a center view on this, and then you can bring up your other windows that could, for example, be your data collection windows. This would be my note-taking window, so I'm putting that to the side. Even without starting to utilize the MacBook screen, I would have one main window in the middle and then have two windows on the side of it. Then a lot of the time I would also be using the main window as this kind, more of like a 16:9 aspect ratio, but then having an extra window on the side there, so that the main window would still be like centered, but also to the left hand side, and then I would have something else coming up on the right hand side. Here is another example of a great way to utilize that horizontal space. So this is my document where I have all my clients and my finances for the business, and here I just get overview of the whole year together with the summaries, together with every single number in the document. And I don't need to scroll in two directions to be able to get a complete overview of the year. Super useful when working on my agency business. Another thing I really appreciate is video editing in this screen. This allows me to have the inspector up on the right hand side. The preview for a single clip is available here, as you can see. But then the preview for the whole video is also always available here, together with having a super large timeline that really stretches out a lot. This adds so much flexibility to the video editing process that it really beats the way I have been working with 16:9 aspect ratio monitors before. But then when you come to playback, you realize here quite quickly that when you want to play back a video in full screen, you get huge black borders on the side. Since video format's usually 16:9, and yeah, this is just one of the downsides. If you want to watch a movie on this screen, for example, you cannot really utilize the whole size of the screen. You get limited and you get those black borders on the side. It's unfortunate, but it's just something that you have to live with this aspect ratio. When it comes to gaming, this is the setup that I am using. This is my Dell Inspiron 16 Plus, together with the 21:9 aspect ratio screen. And gaming in Overwatch, when you're doing it not competitively, is super fun to just blow the game out on the full width of the screen. But one thing you have to be aware of is that the game actually gets cropped. So you're not seeing what's going on in the very top and in the very bottom. So if you're gonna play competitively, you're gonna be at a disadvantage from playing it this style, and you really probably want to have the black borders on the side and be able to see what's going on in the full game instead. When there is not a competitive element to a game, this is a super immersive experience and really something that I appreciate a lot. For example, just playing on Nintendo Switch, plugging that in with an HDMI and then dragging the game out to fill the whole screen works super well. So even there where there's no native 21:9 resolution, so you can't push that resolution out of the Switch, but still the monitor is able to handle it really well with this kind of stretch feature that it allows. Gaming all in all, very nice experience on 21:9. Very immersive, super nice to get more view on the side, and you really feel like you are one with the game in a different way. Moving back to the 16:9 setup here, what are the main pros of this setup? I would say that one of the main things I really enjoy about it is the fact that it doesn't take up as much space sideways, which means I can easily put my laptop on a roof stand to the left and even have space for another horizontal monitor here on the right if I want to. This kind of setup with a 16:9 in the middle, then my laptop screen on the left, and then another horizontal monitor here on the right is my favorite setup for work. What this means is you will always have your main window centered in front of you, and then you can have your other windows to the side, but you have one full screen where you can work on your main software. When having a 27-inch 4K monitor like this guy here, it is also very easy to do a split and run one software on each side. But more than that is not really comfortable in my opinion. As I told you before, I really love using Excel sheets on the ultra-wide monitor, but writing is something where it doesn't matter at all as much. It is pretty much as fine to do on 16:9 as on 21:9. Video playback, both when you are in a video editing software or when you just want to watch a movie, is definitely better on the 16:9 aspect ratio. It just gives less black borders, and since it is optimized for that aspect ratio, this is just a preferable way to watch content. One way the 16:9 is better that I didn't realize before I started using 21:9 on a regular basis is when you are working with meetings online a lot. What I would typically do is have my meeting window, either from Google Meet or Teams, on the laptop screen so that when I look towards the meeting, I also look into the camera and then it looks like I'm more aware in that meeting. But if I want to share something, share a presentation or share whatever I'm working on, I would have that on the main screen. And sharing is much better with a 16:9 aspect ratio monitor. This goes, of course, if you are sharing the whole screen, which is something that I just revert to, and I know a lot of people also revert to sharing the whole screen. Even in a super wide monitor, you can of course just share a window and this will work fine, but it's just a bit more fluid to do the whole experience of running a meeting, running a presentation or an education online when you're using this setup with a laptop screen together with 16:9 aspect ratio monitor. This same thing holds true if you are using screen recordings a lot. If you are screencasting, it is just better to have a native 16:9 aspect ratio so you can cast the whole screen and then you can edit more smoothly than trying to cut out a part of the screen, which you have to do if you are using 21:9. Video editing works really well in 16:9 as well, but even though I have a 4K resolution here, I still have to choose if I want to use the inspector or if I want to have two preview windows. And it doesn't really matter how I resize here. It will still revert to only showing me one of the two. Also, there is less timeline available, which is something I truly value with the experience in using an ultra-wide monitor. So all in all, I personally prefer using the ultra-wide for video editing tasks. Before going to conclusions, there are a bunch of other things outside of aspect ratio that you really need to think about when you decide what monitor you want for your desk setup. For example, you need to choose the right resolution for what you're going to use it for. I use mainly Quad HD or 4K for office work. But if you would like to choose a monitor for gaming primarily, and you want to game competitively, Probably you want an as high frame rate as possible, and then you probably want a lower resolution monitor, and maybe even a smaller size one. So this is a 27-inch monitor. It is a 4K monitor with 60 Hz refresh rate. It's definitely not the best monitor for gaming. My ultra-wide monitor in my home in Stockholm is a 165 Hz refresh rate 3K monitor. In my opinion, this is way better and way more fun to game with than the 60 Hz that come out of this. So even if you can game on it, it's definitely more meant for office applications in my opinion. You also need to take into consideration the color reproduction of the monitor, and that depends very much on what you want to use it for. And you need to take into consideration the brightness of the monitor. And this is especially if you're going to use it in daytime settings, for example working close to a window and similar. Last but not least, I think you should also really consider how the monitor is charging over USB-C and whether there is functionality to use USB-C for USB hub functionality for other things like keyboards, lights, etc. This is something that I truly value, and you want to make sure that the monitor is able to charge your laptop at a decent wattage so that you don't get stuck with having to plug your charger to be able to run your desk setup properly. If I would buy another monitor right now, would I choose an ultra-wide or a regular 16:9 aspect ratio? I have to say that the total experience of using one monitor on a desk like this, I prefer the ultra-wide experience. So if you're gonna go out and select just one monitor to put on your desk, I would recommend that you get an ultra-wide. It just gives you that immersive experience when gaming. It gives a lot of value when video editing. It gives a lot of value when working in multiple documents or being able to use a really wide Excel sheet, for example. And there are actually a ton of applications for it that you don't really know before you start getting into it. There are some small cons to using the ultra-wide, but you can work around them, and I am actually really comfortable working around the limitations of the ultra-wide format. What do you think? Do you agree with my decision of going for ultra-wide as a preferred one monitor to put on my desk? Or would you rather pick a 16:9 aspect ratio such as this guy here? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you have any other questions about this topic, please also ask them down in the comments. I'm usually quite quick to get back on questions there. I'm W2Best, I make in-depth gear reviews and tutorials, and I will see you in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye bye.